You ever watch something that makes you never want to hike again or go outside or any of the above? Because that is missing 411. Because that is missing 411. And that is what we are going to be watching today. And I think it's going to be really dark, mysterious, crazy, but I am here for it. If you do get a chance, I'd appreciate if you can leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. And I will have Wendigoon's video linked in my description below, so be sure to give him a like and subscribe. He does an amazing job. And here we go. I am ready for this. Missing 411s I know are crazy and probably just like other videos that have traumatized me. This is going to be something to add to the list of things that I don't want to do now. All right, let's go.
We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. Now, as mentioned earlier, Missing 411 describes unexplainable disappearances within the North American continent. Now, at the moment, I am more of a hobbyist into Missing 411. I enjoy reading the stories and then relaying that information to you all. However, my friend is what I would consider.
I've only watched maybe like 2 or 3 missing 411s. I've watched a couple of Mr. Ballin's videos, and then I did watch a few of Lore Lodge because I really like that channel too. So both of those, I that's what kind of introduced me to missing 411s, but I really haven't watched very many, but they're very interesting.
Considered to be an expert. Not only has he done first-hand research into the individuals and locations mentioned, but he routinely harasses government employees to get more information
Oh,
about the cases,
good.
which is definitely something I can get behind.
Yes.
And that friend is my fellow host
Oh.
of the Weird Bible podcast and host of the Lore Lodge,
It's Lore Lodge. You should if you like that kind of stuff. He's great. He's a great channel. Love his stuff.
Aiden Matthias. So rather than having myself give you a rundown of what constitutes a 411 case and giving you the commonalities that I found between them, I'll just let the expert do it.
Thank you, Isaiah, you beautiful, beautiful giant man. My name's Aiden Mattis, and I am the host of the Lore Lodge, where we talk about history, folklore, the paranormal, religion, and, of course, the missing 411 phenomenon. When Isaiah first asked me to be involved in this video, my immediate response was, "Who do you think you are to approach me in such a manner?" In reality, I was actually quite grateful because Isaiah and I are good friends, and I like
That's awesome. I didn't realize this was like a collaboration. Oh, I love this. This is great.
helping. The exact thing that he asked me to go over, however, was the missing 411 profile. What makes a case a missing 411 case? Because, of course, we're not just dealing with any missing persons case here.
Oh, that is true. Because like I think the missing 411 cases, I think they're special, right? Like because like unexplainable, weird circumstances, and I think most of them are documented correctly, like with law enforcement and stuff. I think, right? Hopefully. May maybe I'm totally wrong.
Cases that have obvious explanations, such as foul play, self-harm, or, animal predation, something like that.
Okay, okay.
Those don't get researched as missing 411 cases. They're actually ruled out immediately upon there being a simple explanation. So, a missing 411 case is, by definition, a case for which there is no rational explanation.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense because like the ones that I've listened to have been wild.
And on top of that, there are a number of factors that go into this that David Paulides, the guy who started writing the books on the missing 411 phenomenon, the guy who coined the term, which, by the way, in case you're wondering what missing 411 means, missing is obvious, it's missing persons cases, and 411 is the dial code for calling for information. It's the information hotline.
Oh,
So
right.
missing 411 is missing information.
Do we even still have that anymore? Because yeah, I remember like the 411 code, so or like dialing 411 and using it, but is that even still a thing anymore? It can't be. Like it can't be. These are these are olden time methods.
The information being exactly what happened to these people who went missing and were found in unusual circumstances, or who were found dead, or who were not found at all. So, David Paulides put together his profile points. Well, what do these cases generally have in common? There's a number of things, and while not every single one will apply to every single case, a majority of them usually do. So what I'm going to do for you here is I'm going to go through, I'm going to explain the profile points, and I'm going to give you quick little explanations regarding cases that fit those profile points so that Isaiah can get on with the rest of the video with you having a solid understanding of exactly what he's talking about. There are 12 primary profile points regarding missing 401 cases.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. Okay. All right. See, like, I feel like I should have watched this before I listened to some of these because, well, I mean, I guess you don't have to, but at the same time, I feel like I've listened to 401 cases and been like, what in the hell is going on? So this is good. This is good.
One of which is that they are clustered, usually. There will
Okay.
be a number of cases that occur in one specific area, and there are 52 of these clusters across the continental
Oh,
United States and
wow.
Canada. The other 11 missing 401 profile points are as follows. Most of these cases occur in national parks.
Okay.
Many of them involve elevation changes. A lot of them occur around bodies of water. People will often go missing near berry shrubs or boulder fields. Generally, the boulder
Oh.
fields are granite. A lot of people who are found won't have any memory of how they went missing or even the time during which they were. They'll
You have memory loss from these? Oh my God. Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. These stories are going to be crazy.
just suddenly show up somewhere and not be able to explain what happened. Many people who are found are missing clothing. Some people attribute this to paradoxical undressing or heat stroke,
Hmm.
but in a lot of these cases, the weather isn't extreme enough for either one of those to occur. People will sometimes go
Oh.
missing in swamps and end up found in places that they couldn't have possibly gotten to,
Are a lot of these in like the like Appalachian areas? Because I feel like that's always like the spooky area, you know?
or that they couldn't get there within the time frame that they went missing and were found. In a lot of
Hmm.
cases, one of the utterly confounding things is that the dogs that are brought in, the bloodhounds, can't actually find a scent trail even when they're
Oh.
given someone's boot or something like that.
Oh,
They're just
wow.
completely incapable of actually picking up the trail, or the trail will lead somewhere that doesn't actually make sense. Oftentimes, these
Okay.
cases will involve young children. Of course, that's not something that can necessarily be attributed with all of them.
How many children have gone missing under weird circumstances? Oh, God. Oh my gosh. I thought this was like mainly adults. Okay.
Will involve young children. Of course, that's not something that can necessarily be attributed with all of them because many of
Right.
these cases are adults, but when
Yeah.
the cases do involve young children, there are many commonalities between them. And an honorable
Gosh.
mention in terms of profile points here is that not a majority necessarily, but a rather large minority of these cases involve people of German descent. That one probably
Oh.
doesn't have to do with anything, but it is weird.
Aiden,
I mean, that is a very good observation. I mean, like that is, like as you are compiling these stories and learning about these people and everything, and you realize that there's like a very interesting trend with it, like that is a very interesting observation.
Involve people of German descent. That one probably doesn't have to do with anything, but it is weird.
Aiden's going
Right.
to continue to help out throughout the rest of this series, so you'll definitely be seeing more of him. But if you're interested in checking out his channel, The Lore Lodge, or the podcast that him and I do together, the Weird Bible Podcast, it will be the second link in the description just below the ad. In future videos, I want to group together cases that have some common ground and maybe theorize on what that could mean. But for now, again, this is mostly an introduction, I want to go through some of the ones that I find the most terrifying. As a matter
Ooh,
of
yeah.
fact, Aiden
That's what I like. I like the way you think, sir. The most terrifying. Let's go.
and I would both like to do that, so I'll let him have the first go.
Another one of these common points, elevation change. People will be found after going missing at 4,000 feet and they'll be found at 9,000 feet with really no explanation for how it is that they got there.
That's a pretty big jump. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh my.
4,000 feet and they'll be found at 9,000 feet with really no explanation for how it is that they got there. And a case that exemplifies that is that of Bobby Bizup. Bobby went missing in Rocky Mountain National Park. He was
It's just a kid. How did that okay, like I mean, yeah, I know like we don't know what happened. It's gonna be like, how did that happen? But yeah, I mean, this is just a kid.
exemplifies
That
that is
is-
that of Bobby Bizup.
Jeez.
Bobby went missing in Rocky Mountain National Park. He was at camp. It was a Catholic boys camp, and all that could really be discovered is that he was fishing in a local stream, and then the counselors called everybody back for food. One counselor saw Bobby Bizup say he was coming down. He had his fishing rod, turned
Yeah.
around, went down to the bottom of the mountain, and when he got there, he realized Bobby was nowhere to be seen. He just wasn't there. So they launched a search, and they could not find Bobby anywhere.
So it's got to be like a matter of minutes, right? Like he was fishing and they went and got him. He was walking, he was with everybody walking down and then poof, he was just gone. Oh my God.
Wasn't there.
That's like one of my worst fears too. Is I'm just gonna get snatched up one day. Although I'd have to leave my house for that to happen probably. So maybe I'm safe.
So they launched a search, and they could not find Bobby anywhere until eventually they found him several miles away, much higher up on the mountain.
Oh my
And
God.
all they found of him was his hearing aids, his some of his clothes, and fragments of his skeleton. They didn't find anything other than that.
While it's very common
Oh my God. And then so they have absolutely no idea what happened with him. That is terrifying. That poor boy. Oh my gosh.
Clothes and fragments of his skeleton. They didn't find anything other than that.
While it's very common for no remains to be found in a 411 case, sometimes when they are found, the case becomes all the more bizarre.
For real. Like how like he disappeared almost instantly and then showed up somewhere else and then all you had were some bone fragments, his hearing aid, like not even everything of him. Like that is crazy.
One case, sometimes when they are found, the case becomes all the more bizarre. An example of that is the instance of Charles McCuller. In 1974, an 18-year-old Charles McCuller was known for taking hiking trips throughout the Northwest United States.
I'm not gonna lie, hiking has always freaked me out. Like I have nothing against hiking because I think it's absolutely gorgeous and the places that you can go hike in and stuff, but like, oh my gosh, I don't know. It hiking kind of freaks me out. It does kind of scare me.
For about a year, Charles would hike out to these remote locations, take several wildlife pictures, and then work his way back. He was rather experienced, as is common with several 411 cases, and it wasn't uncommon for him to spend a few days by himself in the mountains before returning to civilization. So in 1975, when a 19-year-old Charles told his friends that he was going to hike to the Crater Lake National Park in Oregon,
Beautiful.
they didn't think much of it. That was until Charles didn't return for 3 days when he was only supposed to be gone for 2. So his friends called the police and an investigation soon followed. After performing an investigation, it seems the last person to see him alive was a park ranger who gave him a ride on January the 30th. That park ranger dropped Charles off at the trail he intended to follow. Some reports from that day say that Charles was spotted up to a 45-minute drive away just walking along the side of the road, and some other reports say that they saw someone matching Charles' description trudging through 5 feet of snow. However, the only one that can be confirmed is again that park ranger's testimony.
Yeah, like these are very different stories, but I guess the only one that you really could kind of rely on is the park ranger.
5 feet of snow. However, the only one that can be confirmed is again that park ranger's testimony of taking him to the trailhead. A massive search was mounted for Charles, however it was made difficult to do any searching because of 12 feet of snow recently left by a snowstorm.
Oh,
Not
gosh.
only that, but after the case began, for some reason the FBI became involved. The FBI only...
That seems so weird. Like you have a missing person in a park and then the FBI shows up. Like that doesn't seem normal. Like that just does not seem normal to me.
The case began, for some reason the FBI became involved. The FBI only involves themselves with cases if a kidnapping or foul play is suspected. However, at this time in the investigation, it was just a guy who took too long to be on a hiking trip. To this
Yeah, so like why did the FBI show up then? If that's the reason that they show up for, what kind of like what are they doing? Or what do they know? Or is it their fault? I don't know. I know nothing, but that seems awfully strange.
At this time in the investigation, it was just a guy who took too long to be on a hiking trip. To this day, it's not really explained why the FBI involved themselves. Especially because the evidence was that there was no evidence. The guy had disappeared without a trace.
Right.
For months, nothing could be found, and even after all the snow had melted, there was still no evidence of Charles being anywhere. That was until October the 1st of 1976, nearly 2 years since his disappearance. On that day, 2 hikers found a backpack lying in the woods about 12 miles from the spot where Charles was originally dropped off. Within the backpack, the 2 hikers found keys to a Volkswagen, which after they gave it to the police, was a match to Charles' vehicle. So now that there was a lead, a search began at the location the backpack was found. And shortly thereafter, Charles' remains were discovered in the nearby Bybee Creek. And from there is where it gets weird. Charles' jeans were found sitting upright on a log with no other articles of clothing lying around it. Obviously, Charles hadn't gone hiking into the woods bare-chested just wearing his blue jeans, so his coat, shirt, and other undergarments were nowhere to be found.
It's like somebody steal them or like what happened to him? That's weird, especially if his backpack had everything else and then everything else was together, but the rest of his belongings weren't there. That's weird. That is definitely weird.
Jeans, so his coat, shirt, and other undergarments were nowhere to be found. The only other article of clothing that was there was Charles' socks, which were tucked into the bottom of the jeans' pants legs. The jeans also had the belt and
That's
buttons
odd.
undone, implying that whoever took them off had done so voluntarily. Upon investigation, remember the 2 socks I mentioned being in the pants legs of the jeans? Well, the socks contained various feet bones, and inside of the jeans were snapped shin bones. And then located in a pile about 12 feet away from the log were the skeletal remains of Charles McCuller. Due to the weathering and
So what happened to him? I mean, this doesn't sound necessarily like a animal thing. Are there It's because there's crazy people in the woods, right? Like those scary stories you hear about all the crazy mountain people. That's what it is.
from the log were the skeletal remains of Charles McCuller. Due to the weathering and effects of nature, everything was dismantled and fragmented. However, enough of a dental record could be made to confirm his identity. However,
Gosh.
despite finding his bodily remains, nothing else was located. None of his equipment, his boots, or any other
Oh.
articles of clothing were ever found. Even more bizarre is that the
Could something have happened to him? Like he had an accident, and then I don't know. Maybe there's just like really crappy people in this world, and they just stole his stuff off of him when they saw that he wasn't doing well.
boots or any other articles of clothing were ever found. Even more bizarre is that the location this was found in is an insanely remote part off the trail. Meaning that if
Oh.
Charles was lost and then trying to find his way through the snow, there would be no reason for him to essentially scale an icy mountainside, only to put himself in a more remote and dangerous location. Keep in mind, at the time he went missing, everything was covered in several feet of snow as well. That specific location where he was found was originally suggested to go look back during the original search. However, they couldn't get any men or snowmobiles up there, so they figured reasonably there's no way Charles could have got up there.
That makes sense. Like if you feel like you can't get men or even like a snowmobile up there, I don't know why you would think he would have made it up there, right? But then there he was. It's crazy mountain people. Crazy mountain people.
So what force compelled Charles to climb to his final resting place? And perhaps more importantly, what force put him there? There are cases of what's called paradoxical undressing, or whenever someone gets extremely hot or extremely cold, they begin to take off their clothes in a state of delirium. And while that would make sense for Charles in this case, why were his feet and legs still within his clothing? Or part of
Yeah.
his legs still inside of his clothing? And then you have
Right.
questions about where the boots went and why the top part of his body was separated from some of the parts of the lower part of his body. And even if you were to say
Yeah.
an animal came
I mean, that is a very good question. That is a very good question of like how did he get so separated and stuff left the way that they were? Because that, yeah, there's like it's like finding him definitely left more questions.
separated from some of the parts of the lower part of his body. And even if you were to say an animal came and caused the disfigurement that the rescuers would later find, then how were the jeans still undone, upright, sitting on a log as if nothing
Right.
bad had happened?
Yeah.
It's a mystery to this day and one of the cases that make the 411 so compelling.
As I said before, many of these cases involve young children, and it's not that they're young children that makes it odd, It's that they're young children who are then found in places they really shouldn't be. One example of this is Keith Parkins. Keith Parkins was a 2-year-old who went missing in Ritter, Oregon. Now, Ritter is
My God, this little boy's 2 years old. Oh gosh.
an unincorporated community in rural Oregon, and it's very close to Umatilla National Forest. Keith was out playing with his brothers on his family's cattle ranch. Eventually, when they got called in for lunch, they noticed that he was missing, so they launched a search for him. A few hours later, 4 miles away, they found footprints, and then they had to follow those footprints for another several hours before eventually the next day they found him face down on the ground, covered in scratches, alive, 12 miles from where he went missing. His
12 miles? 12 miles. So something for sure took him. Because I don't think a 2-year-old ends up just 12 miles away casually. That is insane. Well, at least he was alive. Oh gosh, yeah, because that would have been so heartbreaking if he wasn't. But 12 miles. Oh my gosh.
explanation for the scratches was that a cat scratched him, but he had no explanation for how he covered 12 miles in less than 24 hours. And
Yeah.
of course, you know, people wanted to see, is that even possible? So Les Stroud from Survivor Man tried to do the exact same hike, tried to cover the same distance, and he could not do it. So to be clear, I want to really drive that point home. A guy whose job is that they drop him in difficult terrain, and all he does is try and make his way to the extraction zone. He couldn't do this.
That puts it in a like very, very good perspective when you have some like a grown man, right? And like that is what that is his job. And he couldn't do what a like or I guess end up where this 2-year-old ended up in. As much as I don't I'm not like a huge paranormal person, but I feel like these cases I get more interested in, and I guess kind of like try to rack my brain the best I can to figure out like maybe anything that could maybe make sense. But honestly, like a lot of them, most of them, I'm stumped. I'm stumped, and it seems like law enforcement gets stumped, or people get stumped, or and it's and the memory loss thing seems really odd. I don't know. I mean, it's all fascinating to me. It's we live in a crazy world.
So the idea that a 2-year-old
Yeah,
feasibly could cover 12 miles of rough country in less than a day,
there's no way.
it's just straight up impossible. But what
Yeah.
about the ones that aren't necessarily just forests? Well, one of the profile points is swamps. And a case that had quite a few people baffled is the case of Rowan Grifton, who went missing in a swamp in 2010. Rowan was 2 years old, and he was at a
2010, that's really not that long ago.
case of Rowan Grifton, who went missing in a swamp in 2010. Rowan was 2 years old, and he was at a family party at his grandmother's house, which is directly across the street from Barden State Wildlife Management Area. Now, that's not a national forest, but it is a state wildlife management area.
Mm.
New York is weird about their wildlife management areas. When we were doing our investigation on Tom Messick, the State Game Service would not speak to us. Rowan was
Oh,
playing with
wow.
a cat, and then the cat ran off into the woods. Rowan chased the cat and was eventually discovered to be missing. They launched an immediate search of the area, and then when they couldn't find him, they called in help from the authorities. They searched for the rest of the afternoon before deciding to close down the search for the night because it just wasn't safe and they weren't going to make any progress.
It has to be so gut-wrenching to have your kids so close and then like in a blink of an eye they just disappear. Like I can't imagine that. I feel like this is like every parent's worst nightmare.
Before deciding to close down the search for the night because it just wasn't safe and they weren't going to make any progress. So, the next day, when they went out searching again, they did actually find him pretty quickly because they called out for him and he called back. But he was not
Oh.
found by the initial search group. He was found by a splinter group that decided to go check out a swampy area 3 miles away. All Rowan could tell people when they found him clinging to a tree in the center of a pond in the swamp that this 2-year-old boy could not have possibly swam to.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, he was dry. All he could tell them was that he was scared of the cows, and the cows drove him out to this tree. There were no cows in the area. Rowan
That is so strange. But yeah, I guess like trying to decipher what a 2-year-old saw is probably next to impossible, right? Especially because they probably only know like so many words and like how to describe something too. So maybe it wasn't something that looked like a cow. but that was like the closest thing that their brain could comprehend. But the fact that he ended up, what, 2 miles away in the middle of a swamp in a tree and he's dry, that is wild. That is wild. And then he was out, what, he was out there all night? That's crazy. Yeah. See, like these stories, I'm like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? How? What? Why?
One could give no other explanation of how he got there, and as I said, there weren't any cows.
One of the
There has to be like some crazy conspiracy theories with all of these. Like there just has to be. I don't know how there couldn't be. Like whether it's like aliens, Bigfoot, witchcraft, ghosts, or just like crazy people or something, but I'd imagine that the conspiracy theories around these cases are wild.
Other explanation of how he got there, and as I said, there weren't any cows.
One of the more interesting details, at least to me, about 411 cases is how they often happen to people who are incredibly prepared for whatever's happening. And it creates a near state of panic that if this could happen to them, then it could happen to anyone.
True.
And for an example of that, look no further than Aaron Hedges. Aaron frequently hiked a mountain range ominously known as the Crazies, located in the northern Rocky Mountain range of Montana. On September 3rd of 2014, a 38-year-old Aaron went out on a hunting trip with two of his friends. Him and his friends did this all the time. They would go out on horseback, bring all their gear on a pack mule, and then camp out for several days as they hunt big game. As a matter of fact, they were so experienced at doing this that Aaron and his friends had mapped out several of the trail routes on their own and even set up these small waypoints that had supplies and camping gear in case they needed any on their trip. So if you're confident enough in your hiking abilities that you'll leave thousands of dollars of gear in the middle of safe houses that you built dozens of miles up mountainsides, you're probably pretty good at it.
That is very true because I have a horrible sense of direction and I couldn't do this. If I had to put something out there and bury it, I mean, I think I'd be like a squirrel. Like it would just be gone and it'd be dumb luck that I ever found it again.
While moving up the mountain on September the 5th, the mule that was carrying everyone's gear became spooked, and whenever it jumped, it caused Aaron's sleeping bag to fall off its back and down the mountainside. Now, it gets very cold in the Rockies at night, however, this wasn't a problem because, as mentioned earlier, they had waypoints set up with spare supplies.
Right.
So on September the 5th, Aaron began to travel by himself to one of the waypoints a few miles down the trail. This was towards a location known as Sunlight Lake. I cannot stress this enough, this was a trail that Aaron was very familiar with.
Sunlight, sunlight trail? That sounds like very mysterious.
Down the trail. This was towards a location known as Sunlight Lake.
Oh, Sunlight Lake. Yeah. Sunlight Lake. Sunlight Lake sounds very ominous in a way. I don't know. Mysterious. Very, very, very beautiful, but I don't know. I could I'm not dogging the name. I actually think it's really cool. I think it's a really cool name, but I also feel like stuff named like that, it's like, oh well, like they were last seen at Sunlight Lake and then they just disappeared. It's like a movie name.
I cannot stress this enough. This was a trail that Aaron was very familiar with. He had built several permanent camping sites on it and left the group with a GPS, a walkie-talkie, a cell phone, a bow and arrow, and a gun. He began to walk away from the two others, saying that he would be back by nightfall, and Aaron was never seen again. Whenever Aaron didn't show up that night, the two didn't think that it was a big deal. They just figured he probably stayed in the safe house for the night. However, when there was no word from him the next day, they began to panic. Especially whenever they go to check his location on the GPS, because the day previous they weren't able to get the GPS to show his location. And whenever the location did pop up, he was miles and miles away, completely off the map from the selected trail area. So the two come off the mountain and alert Aaron's wife, who then alerts the police, and a search begins on September the 8th. The first day, they looked with the whole 9 yards. They had infrared cameras, they had about 20 dog teams scoping out the entire mountain, and helicopters flying everywhere trying to find Aaron. However, nothing was found the first day. But on the second day, something was found that raised more questions than it did answers. On the second day, while walking to the location to begin the search for that day, search crews stumbled across what seemed to be a makeshift campfire where it seems someone had tried to start a fire with a pack of cigarettes. Nearby this makeshift campfire was an empty water bladder, a pair of straps for a waistband for a hiking backpack, and a pair of boots, all of which belonged to Aaron. The boots were lying side.
That seems very scary. That seems very scary. Of like, did something happen? Did he lose it? Did somebody else get him and this is his stuff and that person is still around? Like, so many questions.
And a pair of boots, all of which belonged to Aaron. The boots were lying side by side, neatly standing up, as if someone had calmly taken them off and placed them next to the fire. But then, in the middle of the Montana cold, decided to not put them back on. And once again, this was in a location that wasn't even being searched because it had been completely searched the day before. Not
That's
only
so
that, but it was
weird.
further down the mountain than the location where Aaron would have gone missing. So for all this to have worked out, Aaron would have had to walk one direction for several miles for his GPS location to show up, walk the other way, but then miss the group who was looking for him, and then
Right.
attempt to start a fire one night in a location that was searched shortly thereafter, only to then take off his boots and try to walk through the cold barefoot? Not to mention the dog teams that were running around the entire place and can never pick up a scent. So despite this, which should have been a great break,
I feel like there's so many factors in this one of like, how did you not find him? And then how did this show up of all things? Like a whole little like mini campsite that was in a place that was already searched like that. I mean, this is crazy.
in the case, nothing else was found. At least, nothing was found for 9 months. Until in June of 2015, a hiker discovered the backpack of Aaron Hedges. Inside of this backpack, the hiker discovered a cell phone, a hunting vest, extra clothes, a hunting license, and several granola bar wrappers, all of which belonging to Aaron Hedges. However, a short distance from that backpack, and potentially the weirdest development of the whole case, the hiker found sitting on top of a rock a thermos and an open energy drink. The family later
Oh,
saying that this thermos belonged to Aaron. This location was on top of the mountain,
did the energy drink belong to him or not? Because I feel like that would probably tell us at least something, maybe.
later saying that this thermos belonged to Aaron. This location was on top of the mountain that not only had a very clear view of the ranch beneath, but also of a major roadway right in front of the ranch. And it
Oh,
seems that when Aaron was drinking from that thermos and the energy drink, he was just sitting on the rock watching the road and the farm in front of him. And despite another massive investigation from
well, what if it wasn't him? Oh my gosh, it's like, okay, like now my brain is just like, well, what if it wasn't him? But I guess what if it was him, like what is he doing? And if it wasn't him, then who the hell's running around up there?
road and the farm in front of him. And despite another massive investigation from the spot that this gear was found, no remains were located. That
Oh
was
no.
until 1 year later when the skeletal remains of Aaron Hedges were finally discovered. They were lying about half a mile down the hillside from the location where his gear was found the year prior. This was about
Oh,
6 miles from where the makeshift campfire and boots were discovered, and about 15 miles from the last place where his friends saw him.
that is a weird that that is a weird area. I mean, like how'd you end up 15 miles away from like the last place like where your friend saw you? Let alone, like in relation to where like his other stuff was found. I don't know. That is crazy. And for somebody who is so experienced, like obviously this isn't just a, oh, I just took a wrong turn sort of situation because he would know exactly where he's going. So then how did he end up all the way out there?
And to make it even more bizarre, the remains were found a few hundred feet from the road and the ranch. And just in
A few hundred feet from the road and the ranch? Okay, like that seems a little sus.
remains were found a few hundred feet from the road and the ranch. And just in case you thought we'd get any answers, there were no cause of death determined from the bones that were found.
Of
There was no
course.
trauma on any of the bones or any indications of an injury that could have led to his death. For all we know, he simply died there with no earthly explanation. So think about this case. An experienced
That's so
hiker
weird.
begins to walk to a location that he's incredibly familiar with.
Yeah.
However, he walks the completely wrong direction and then comes back in the wrong direction before he decides to take his boots off, walk another 6 miles to a mountaintop where he calmly sits down and has a coffee and energy drink before he
Yeah.
leaves his backpack. And it seems that he was not only energized from the drinks, but also the granola wrappers he was eating, walks half a mile, and dies right before he hits the road.
Yeah, like that doesn't make any sense. Like why? Like why would he go through all that? And if he was properly geared and he has food and he's got drinks and he's got energy drinks, like he didn't have coffee or whatever, or when he like made camp. And then I feel like the weirdest thing is the walking with no shoes. Like that seems really, really bizarre. I don't know. I don't know.
Granola wrappers he was eating, walks half a mile, and dies right before he hits the road. A lot of people online say that he passed into a different dimension, which, sure, I've got nothing better.
I mean, yeah, see, like I would love to know like what some of these conspiracy theories are that are around these cases because I mean they are crazy. These are, insane circumstances that people are disappearing under. So I can only imagine where that puts other people's minds, that know about these stories that it would totally make sense if we heard like some crazy stuff.
That he passed into a different dimension, which, sure, I've got nothing better. It's a story that really makes you ask, what happens in the woods when we're not looking?
I don't know, but the forest is scary. I don't even, like I think the forest is gorgeous and I think it's beautiful. Um, but you hear like some weird stuff, you hear about a lot of weird things, and sometimes when you have too much of an imagination, the forest is scary, just like the ocean.
It's a story that really makes you ask, what happens in the woods when we're not looking?
Some other cases I want to mention that they didn't really exemplify any of these individual profile points, but I thought that they were interesting, were those of Maurice Doc Demetz, who went missing while topaz hunting in Pike
Oh.
National Forest. He was there with his friend, and this is another case where this was a person who was physically disabled. He had a very time walking on his own. He was, I believe, 82 years old.
Oh my
So there just
gosh.
wasn't any way that he was really going anywhere fast.
Yeah.
His friend, after a few hours, went to check on him because they were just topaz hunting 50 yards from each other, and he checked on him a few times, but the last time he went to check, Maurice wasn't there anymore, and nobody at all could find him.
I mean, I would say in this case, it's not like he could have just ran off, I mean, he's 82 years old and had some troubles getting around. Yeah, bro is not just gonna be running off.
Wasn't there anymore, and nobody at all could find him. There's no way this guy wandered off on his own, and they determined there was no motive for the guy who was with him to have killed him. So,
Right.
very strange case. There's the case of Eric Lewis, who went missing while hiking, particularly climbing Mount Rainier. They were ice climbing, he and his two friends. They noticed that they hadn't heard anything from him in a while, and when they pulled on the rope that would have gone down to him, it was slack.
Uh-oh.
Eric seemingly just disappeared off the side of the mountain. He had unhooked his carabiner, and that was the last thing anybody could figure out that he had actually done.
Oh my God. That one seems terrifying because you guys are all kind of connected and then all of a sudden he's gone. Oh my gosh.
Hooked his carabiner, and that was the last thing anybody could figure out that he had actually done. His clothes and gear were found in a small ice cave a little bit down the mountain, and that was it. That was the end.
That's it? That's all they found were some of his clothing in an ice cave. But then why, I mean, if he didn't unhook it and something happened, then who or what did? Oh my gosh.
Found in a small ice cave a little bit down the mountain, and that was it. That was the end. They could not find him, and
That is crazy.
the ice cave either did not go back far enough or was not navigable enough for them to look into it. There's also the case of Paul LeMay, who went missing on Mount Marathon. Now, Mount Marathon is, of course, in Kenai Fjords National Park. So He was running the Mount Marathon race. He was the last person to be running the race. He was seen very close to the finish line by the crew who were packing up. He decided he wanted to make it all the way and then come back down, and he was never seen. They searched all over the mountain, every side.
He was in like an actual race and disappeared? Like, what? Like, I feel like these are so I think what's so fascinating about these is like a lot of like all of these, it's like they're not just weird one-off situations of like, they went hiking by themselves and, like anything could happen. It's like it seems like there's like a lot of eyewitnesses around to kind of vet for them of being like, yeah, like they were literally right here or they were behind me. They were climbing with us. They, you know, said that they were gonna go get their gear and come back. I mean, like, it's I feel like that's what makes these like even more confusing and more kind of terrifying at the same time.
And there was no evidence that he had ever left the peak. Finally, the case of Bart Schleier, who went missing in Reed's Lake in the Yukon Territory. This was not in a national park or national forest, but it was in an extremely isolated area that you actually had to fly to. He was brought in
Oh,
via an amphibious plane, and then when the pilot returned to pick him up at the scheduled time, Bart was not there. There was no sign that he had actually been hurt or attacked while he was there, but he just disappeared. His food was still all packed up at the campsite. There was a bag that had an impression on it that made it look like somebody might have been sitting on it, leaning back, maybe waiting for game to come along. And of course, Bart was a world-class hunter. This is a guy who would track and tag Siberian tigers.
mm,
And I mean,
just
the
poof.
idea that a bear in the Yukon would catch him off guard enough to kill him without any sign of struggle just doesn't make sense. On
Yeah.
top of that, if it were a bear, a mountain lion, a pack of wolves, anything like that, they probably would have also gone for the food that was left at his campsite, since that was
That's true. That is a very good point. Yeah, they'd probably go for his backpack or I mean, I guess more so him or both or, that would have been rummaged through at the very least, I would think.
like that, they probably would have also gone for the food that was left at his campsite. Since that was untouched, it seems very unlikely that he was a victim of animal predation. So that just about covers all the profile points and a number of cases that exemplify them. Once again, I'm Aiden Mattis of the Lore Lodge. You can find us here on YouTube, and I'll toss it back to Isaiah to go over some more details.
A
Job.
lot of the missing 411 cases are entirely unexplainable, not only because of the condition in which remains or some evidence was eventually found, but just in the way that the entire thing kicked off. And I want to end this set of stories with one such case, that case being of Garrett Bardsley. On August the 20th of 2004,
It's so sad of seeing all these children though. Like that kind of makes me sad. I mean, it's sad with the adults too, but it seems like with the kids, it's like they're not even doing anything crazy. It's like they just happen to live somewhere that's near a forest or I mean that the one kid at the camp, I mean, he was just fishing and there's tons of people around. So it's like what happened?
that case being of Garrett Bardsley. On August the 20th of 2004, Garrett was out with his father on a Boy Scouts camping trip. Garrett was 12 years old and was out with his father and Boy Scout troop on a weekend getaway. This was in the Uinta Mountains of Utah at a place known as Cubaret One Lake. Now, in several of the cases that Aiden and I have talked about up until this point, it involves an experienced person going into an uncharted realm of nature or someone getting trapped in the harsh elements. However, this situation was neither of those things. The location where Garrett and his father were camping was essentially a sort of park. There were several lots that were set up where groups could come and pitch a few tents and have access to hiking trails and lakes to fish in, and everything was very close and
Mm.
very easy going.
Okay, so it's like very family oriented, bring your kids, you can have a good time, you'll be safe, you're near stuff. Okay.
Fish in, and everything was very close and very easy going. Again, it was a common space to bring out campers so that they can have their first Boy Scout camping trip.
Mm.
All the trails were cut out and very clearly marked to the point it was essentially a sidewalk. And on top of all of that, Garrett had his wilderness survival training. So if anything did happen out here, it should essentially be a cakewalk. Garrett and his father walked to the lake that was just downhill from their camping spot. While they were fishing, Garrett slipped and fell into the water, soaking his pants and shoes.
Oh
Garrett
man.
decided to walk back to the tent so that he could change, and then he told his father he would come back down in just a minute to continue fishing. His
Right.
father didn't think anything of it because not only, as I mentioned, were the trails clearly marked and it was all a very easy path to walk on, but the campsite was about 200 feet away from where they were currently fishing.
Okay, so like it's literally everything is that close by. So yeah, like why like I could see like why his dad wouldn't be too concerned about it. It makes sense.
If it wasn't for a little bit of tree cover, you could have a straight line of sight
Yeah.
from the side of the bank to the campsite. The dad, being overly cautious, even directed his son as his son was walking away to stay on the marked path and followed him with his eyes until he got up to the tree line. Meaning, at the last point Garrett was seen, he could have been within like 50 feet of the tent. So
Right.
Garrett's dad continued fishing, but after about 20 minutes, he thought it was odd that Garrett hadn't come back to join him. So his dad comes up to the campground to check, and it turns out that Garrett never made it back to the camp. And as a matter of fact, Garrett was never seen again.
See, like that's terrifying. That it was 200 yards like from like where they were fishing to their tent and it's like a family very family friendly, beginner friendly area. Everything is close. But there's probably other people there too and he just poof vanishes gone. Like that is terrifying.
Remains or otherwise. It seems in just a few brief
Yeah.
seconds, even, that Garrett was walking through the tree line, something took him off the trail. Either his own curiosity, or something in the woods, or something by force got him to leave the clear path he was following. A
Right.
massive search was mounted, and the only evidence of Garrett that was ever found was about half a mile off the trail in a granite boulder patch. One of his wet socks was discovered. Simply lying.
How is it just one of his socks and then like in a grant like a boulder field? How does that even happen? How does that happen? You guys have any thoughts on any of these videos or stories that we've seen so far? Let me know what you guys think because honestly, I have no idea. Aside from like maybe trying to go like interdimensional paranormal type stuff, I honestly have no clue. Like like did Bigfoot scoop him up and now he's gone and it's so weird that not full like these people just aren't being found or that how quickly they just seem to vanish. It's what like this is so crazy.
In a granite boulder patch, one of his wet socks was discovered, simply lying there crumbled up in a massive field of rocks.
Oh my
Even from the
gosh.
location where the sock was found, the main road was a quarter mile away, and there were so many campsites and roads all around the area, it's almost as if Garrett or whatever had Garrett was purposefully avoiding people.
Right. I mean they would have to, but that seems like a lot of work cuz this place seems like it's so populated and everything is like really conveniently close by.
And despite efforts from search and rescue, dog teams, and horseback riders searching the area, nothing was ever found. Not even the fishing pole that Garrett took with him. And to this
Oh my
day,
god.
nothing more is known of what happened to Garrett Bardsley, save for one lonely sock. With
I can't imagine being these parents though. This is heartbreaking. And then you go probably the rest of your entire life and you'll never know what happened to your son. Uh that breaks my heart.
nothing more is known of what happened to Garrett Bardsley, save for one lonely sock. With several of these 411 cases, it boggles the mind to even try to come up with some explanation. Of
Yeah.
course, that doesn't mean everything that's labeled as a 411 case is completely unexplainable. A point could be made for several of these cases that it was just someone out hiking who got too far in over their head, or someone who just got lost and then nature does what nature does. However, that doesn't explain some of the weird circumstances or some of the gear found or how the remains were uncovered. Another
Right.
theory is that people say it could be a serial killer or the police covering up for some murder they don't want on the public record. But even
Some of that's just like as far as like maybe a serial killer, sure. Like maybe in some of these cases and maybe in some of these parts, sure. Like maybe you have some crazy mountain man running around and they're like I mean these places are huge, so I guess you could be hiding anywhere. As far as like maybe the FBI law enforcement type angle or cops. I don't know. I don't know if I can totally. That seems so s- specific that like you know exactly when these people are going camping and what do they do and why. Like and more, yeah, I guess like more importantly, like why would they want anything to do with these people? That one seems a little too odd. Not to say that like somebody running around in the forest killing people isn't, out there either. But
Be a serial killer, or the police covering up for some murder they don't want on the public record. But even then, in a lot of these cases, like that of Aaron Hedges, even if he was
like even if something happened and you had some sort of like I guess like quote unquote like either accident or they can't figure out if it was a murder or not. I don't know why they would cover it up though, because I mean you could easily have found him and then, I guess if you wanted to be crappy police work, then you could probably just make something up, right? Um, I don't know, like the cop angle seems a little too hard to do, but like with the one man and the FBI showing up, like that's weird. Like that is definitely weird. So that definitely raises some questions. So like maybe they are doing stuff out. I don't know. I don't know. It almost seems like all of these could be possible.
killed, then how did that person leave all the gear, evade search and rescue team,
Yeah,
and get the remains in the places they were found?
that is so true. Yeah, it's like their stuff is being found in weird spots and in weird states. It's like, oh, like it looks like they just sat down or it looks like they like camped here or whatever, and it's like so if you were being chased by any means or if you were being or you got hunted down by another person or anything like that, I don't think any of this stuff would look so casual, I guess.
Even if he was killed, then how did that person leave all the gear, evade search and rescue team,
Yeah.
and get the remains in the places they were found? People
Yeah.
tie a lot of these theories into government conspiracies and say that it all relates back to MK Ultra.
That's because MK Ultra is everywhere. Everything is linked to MK Ultra. You can't blame those people though. Okay, you can't blame them. MK Ultra. I mean, you could make it make sense for so much stuff. So I can't blame them. I can't blame them for that one.
With a lot of these stories, people say that maybe the government has these top secret facilities set up in the middle of the woods, and if anyone finds evidence of it, they're wiped out and their body made to look like a mystery.
I would believe that of all these theories so far, I would believe that one for sure.
Woods, and if anyone finds evidence of it, they're wiped out and their body made to look like a mystery.
Yeah.
And while that sounds crazy, with some of the stories you've probably heard today and will hear in the future, it's probably the most plausible.
Okay, so like he agrees with me. Yeah, I honestly that one sounds the least crazy out of all the crazy ones. Like I as crazy as that sounds, it also doesn't seem impossible though. Where some of the other ones seem a little bit you'd have to have so many things go right for them to all kind of come together. Whereas this seems more of, I guess, plausible, but still crazy.
Perhaps some of the most interesting stories to me are stories of delirium and paranoia that sets in. Because while we
Yeah.
can wrap our head around that in a physical sense, we understand that people can essentially go crazy. It's the things that made them go crazy and the reason for it that I find to be so enthralling.
That's a good point too. But then it is weird because none of these people are connected, and these are over, you know, some of these are decades old. So, is it something like I don't know? Is there like something in the forest that's like making people crazy? Maybe, maybe.
Because what power does the forest hold to drive a mind mad in such a small amount of time? Of course,
Yeah,
several of the cases could be written off as the effects of a wild animal attacking someone or either discarding their pieces across a large distance, but that doesn't answer questions like the bones of Charles being found in his own socks. But then
right.
again, at that point, what does? If it's not a creature we know exists, what of one that we don't know exists? Whenever I hear about these stories, I often think about a lot of the ancient legends that have to do with the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. Stories of siren spirits that exist out in the woods that pull men into them only to never be seen again. And stories
True. Yeah, that is true. Like there's a lot of mythical things too that if you wanted to entertain those, some of these stories kind of could be fitting for it.
of creatures that rise up in the night and make men vanish from their tents only to be found horribly mutilated several days later. And while it may not be some siren spirit or monster of the woods, whatever did it then is surely still doing it now. Things like
True.
that are easy for me to forget because I grew up in the forest. It's always been something that I viewed as a friend or something personal to me that I've never really found scary, at least, during the daytime. And since it's something I've always known, it's never been the unknown. And because of that, and since the unknown is where we derive most of our fear, it's never been something I've been afraid of.
He makes a really good point with that because yeah, I am not somebody who grew up in nature like probably like him or even like most people, like I wasn't in the city either, but definitely wasn't too big of a nature person, and I think that that is definitely an unknown factor for me that does it probably adds to my uneasiness of hearing all these like stories and like when you hear about forest stuff. Not that I don't respect it or like it or enjoy it though. It's just that like I definitely don't have a background in that, but I can appreciate the beauty of it.
And because of that, it's easy for me to forget that there is this secret might and power that exists within the woods. Every single piece of it is alive, from the
Yeah,
trees
that
and
is
the
yeah.
grass and the creatures that inhabit them to even
Mhm.
the air you breathe in. It feels electric. It's as if every moment that you stand within nature, you are existing within a living creature. And if you ever lose sight or respect of that, you may be the next victim. That's really what it boils down to, right? The fear of the unknown. That's why these stories terrify us and keep us up at night, because they seem to be so unexplainable. And as someone who's familiar with the mystique and the mystery of the forest, I never want to lose sight of why it's so alluring in the first place. And that's one of the reasons that I'm here right now. A few of you may be wondering why I've had a change of venue. And that's because I'm at the ocean. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm deathly terrified of the
Oh
ocean and
no.
everything to do with
Same, bro, same. Yep, I'm scared too, but I'm more than happy to stay on shore.
it. So to make it even worse for myself, I came out here at night and I'm not doing well. The
Oh no.
reason that I came out here is because for me, the woods and the mysteries of the woods and everything associated with them don't really mean anything. The tide is coming up to my legs, okay? Because again, I was raised in it. To me, it's perfectly normal. However, something I am terrified of is the nature I don't know. See, I was never raised near the beach. I only came to the beach on vacation. To me, the ocean was a boogeyman I never interacted with, and it still is to some degree. But it's for that very reason that the ocean interests me as much as it does. Because in spite of how afraid I am of it, and in spite how terrifying of it, it exists regardless.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me, the terrors and the fascination that I can pull out of it.
I bro, the ocean is scary though. It is scary, just like the forest. The ocean is terrifying as well. There's some cool stuff in there though, just like there's really cool stuff in the forest. There's really cool stuff in this world, but there is some scary, scary stuff in both.
And in a sense, the ocean and the woods are one. It's all part of nature.
Uh-huh.
It's all part of this great big beast that we're all living in. And we can't really explain, or we can't really.
Oh, no.
I swear I heard something run up. Oh man. It's all part of something
You're
we
you're
can't wrap
okay.
our heads around. And it exists in spite of how we feel about it. The reason I'm here is because as I go through this series and as I talk about Missing 411, I don't want to lose the terror or the majesty of these stories and why I feel they're so important. Because they're a blemish across our history of trying to figure out everything that we can't put together, and that blemish
true.
is nature itself. So if you're like me and the woods don't scare you, but this does, it's all part of the same beast. So as hopefully over the coming series we put some pieces together about what the secret of Missing 411 means, maybe we can get some closure on things like this. Probably not. I hate it. I'm incredibly nervous right now. But if you made it this far
Aw.
into the video, I just want to say thank you for watching. I am horrified right now. I think I'm actually here past curfew, and I'm not supposed to be here, and I keep hearing people walking around in the darkness, so I'm going to call this short. But I just want to say thank you so much for watching.
Well, don't get in trouble. It's not worth getting in trouble over. You're doing good though. You're doing good.
Thank you all so much for checking this out. Thank you so much to Aiden for being a part of the video. Aiden's a fantastic guy. As I mentioned,
Yes.
his channel will be in the description, along with the podcast him and I do together about weird biblical topics. So if you like my weird biblical stuff, be sure to check us out over there, and check out Aiden's channel regardless. He's a great guy, and I really like what he's doing on the Lore Lodge. So that covers that. I will be continuing this. What I have in mind for upcoming episodes in the series is to take cases that involve caves, or to take cases that involve mountaintops and other weird anomalies.
Okay.
Something jumped. Other weird anomalies that exist between everything, and then trying to draw a through line between them. So we'll see how that goes. And again, this was mostly an introduction, but hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm excited for where the series is going, and keep your eye out. I may be visiting some locations, considering, as mentioned earlier, I live pretty close to a lot of the scares that happen. So we'll
Ooh,
see how
nice.
that goes. But for now, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed,
I
and I will
did.
see you in the next one. Bye. This is horrific.
You know, I really, really enjoyed this. This was really interesting. I kind of like the breakdown in the intro to the 411. Had I come across this earlier, I probably would have appreciated it. But this was great. I loved seeing Lord Lodge in there. If you haven't watched his channel, I highly recommend him too. He's great. Um, he has a lot of really interesting knowledge, topics, history. It like his channel's great. I'll put a link to his channel below in the description too, just because he's so good as well. But yeah, I mean this is good. I would like to watch more some of Missing 411. So let me know if you guys like this. This was great. This was very well done. I really enjoy Wendigoon a lot. So be sure to give him a like and subscribe as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you guys being here. And that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys had a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.